coming in, so this is great to have a good crowd. And Kim, why don't you start us off?
Oh, sure. Sorry. So I think your intro slide's actually before the agenda.
Oh, it is.
Sorry.
Oh, there we go. Very good. Okay,
I think
good.
mine's after.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to introduce our first breakout session of the day. Glad you could join us. My name's Carrie Otto, and I'm the Director of Enterprise CRM at the University of Minnesota. I have been working with our CRM implementation really since the beginning, back in 2012 when I was the business lead for our one-stop implementation, and now working at the enterprise level. And I am super excited today to introduce my colleagues, John and Kim and oh my gosh, I just lost and Aaron. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. From Arizona State University and from the University of Arizona. They're going to give us a great presentation today. But before we start, I just want to remind everybody that we have chat on the right-hand side where you can put in comments about what's going on. And there's also a Q&A tab where you can ask questions. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end where our speakers can answer those questions. And so I encourage you to be active and engage in the session. And with that, I will hand it over to Kim.
Thanks, Carrie. John, I'll ask you to switch that slide for me. Thank you. Okay, folks, so I know you all read the short agenda or the kind of description of our presentation today, but just to give you a sense of the agenda, here's what we will be talking through. After I'm done talking about this agenda, we'll do introductions so you know who's talking, but we're going to talk a lot about how ASU versus U of A has done our Salesforce implementation. So we'll talk a little bit about how we started, how long we are in our process, or how far down that road we are. We'll talk about the differences in implementation, both like whether it's top down or we're selling actively. And then we'll do an active case study of just with different ways that we're using specifically cases. We're looking at pretty in detail at service cases this time around. So ASU will talk through the innovations they made for their change of major process and mention their advising portal. I'm going to talk a little bit about the University of Arizona service cases and specifically how our registrar uses that, as well as our Cat Cloud instance. And then we'll spend the rest of the presentation really talking about how we made these things successful. So what training and support we provide to our end users and where that training and support lives within our institution. With that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So my name is Kim Winchell. I am the Customer Engagement and Success Manager at the University of Arizona. I have been on the Trellis team since 2021 in varying roles, but in this role since January. We are a single org institution, and so we do a lot to make sure we're making enterprise scale changes. As you can see in the middle, we do integrate with different areas across campus, but ultimately support all different facets throughout. So that is me. I'll turn it over to, I think John's next, not sure.
Aaron, it's you.
Hello, I'm Aaron Garriss, Director of Student Success Innovations. I've been at ASU since 2003. I've been in the Provost office since 2018. I was one of the college directors to onboard Salesforce in 2013 when we first implemented the platform. And then moved into the Provost office to head up some of our service initiatives, some of our retention activities, all of our Salesforce implementation relative to case management, advisor portal that I'll talk about, knowledge. I like candlelit dinners, long walks on the beach. I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to say, but.
Love it. All right, and then to introduce myself, so John Kozel, Assistant Director with Student Success Innovations in the Office of the Provost at ASU. I've been in this role for just a little over 2 years, working with Salesforce and a couple other products that our team helps support. And I actually had the unique experience, kind of similar to Aaron, being one of the unit leads when Salesforce case management and knowledge were rolling out in a service unit on the student affairs side. So I have a little bit of experience on what it meant then to bring up my team and make sure that they were prepared to use the product, and now provide that level of support for others so that they can make that transition in the same way. And this is one of the slides that we do have our service metrics on, so that's pretty cool to highlight, but we'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a second. All right. So this one, we are kind of splitting these slides so you can kind of see side by side. So we'll kick it off on the ASU side first, just because it's left to right, before I hand it over to Kim to kind of talk through U of A's metrics. But with ASU, we launched in 2013. This was all based on a President's Office initiative of a focus on service and support for students. So in 2013, we launched Salesforce Knowledge for a university-wide FAQ platform to really make sure that consistency and availability were at the top priority for our students and supporting community members. In 2014, we launched Salesforce Case Management, with the initial launch being Admission Services, Experience Center, a handful of units, with the eventual goal of all units rolling out. And this was a requirement. So it's a little bit different for top-down rather than the selling feature. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that today. In 2015, My ASU, it's a one-stop shop for our students at ASU. We launched a Service Center tab, which embedded the Salesforce community for students to be able to access knowledge, case history, and live chat. So having that ability to talk with our Experience Center staff and or gain some assistance. In 2016, we launched Advisor Portal and Student Profile, which are customizations unique to ASU. Aaron's going to be walking through those pretty quickly here in the slide deck to kind of give you a visual of what that's all about. And then Advisor Portal 2.0 launched in 2019, academic advisors managing proactive outreach cases. And then in 2023, we are about 2 weeks away from finishing up the Salesforce migration to the Lightning platform. Very excited about that project. Obviously, the last couple of years have been pretty busy with other things here at the university, but Lightning has been a top priority for our unit and helping make that transition with our AT partners. So excited to be wrapping that project up prior to the holidays. And then some student service case metrics. So we are focused only on the service and student success numbers here, but in fiscal year 14, we were looking at just 172,869 cases. And for fiscal year 24, we were at 1.8, a little bit over 1.8 million. So that's pretty exciting stuff and definitely showcases some of how our numbers have grown over 10 years in Salesforce. Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Such amazing work, Aaron. I always love to hear how you guys are doing. So as we noted here, University of Arizona launched in 2019. So we are about 6 years behind y'all, which makes sense. You're celebrating a decade closely, and we are celebrating about year 4. And so we've done things a little bit differently, but also had kind of a strategic initiative that launched us in 2019 from President Robbins to really kind of center the student experience and really understanding of engagement of how a student moved through University of Arizona. We were a little siloed at the time, and nobody loved the answer of, well, let me pull up that Excel doc for you. And so Salesforce really became the answer of how we track that engagement. In 2019, we really started off by creating a scheduling tool for our advisors that they still use today. But we also launched service cases. And so those were our kind of initial implementations. In 2021 is when we started offering some of those like marketing-based features. So events in Marketing Cloud as well as social. That's also when our team shifted a little bit. And we'll talk about how those team dynamics have changed within the customer engagement and success team itself. In 2022, we launched Cat Cloud, which is our student portal. So again, giving students visibility into the things that are kind of going on behind the scenes in Salesforce. And then in 2023, we recently launched distributed marketing. For those that use Salesforce terms, we're calling it group comms, and then personal program plans. And then much more work to come in 2024. As far as student services into cases, as you can see, we're only a couple of years in compared to their 10 years, but we had a similar kind of starting number, right? So about 100,000 our first year, and we're seeing that continue to grow and double throughout. And so in this last year, we've had 233,481. And I anticipate seeing a very large growth in fiscal year 24 as we get all of our advisors to use service cases and kind of help manage that support and transition across campus. Thanks, Eric.
So one of the things that I think is different, perhaps from the way that U of A and ASU have sort of implemented this customer relation management tool While it was extremely a kind of a top-down experience focused on service at ASU, as we moved through the implementation, onboarded all of the units, some kicking and screaming into Salesforce, we really shifted the focus to empathy and trying to identify where are the pain points, both in the transition, but also in terms of just the overall function of every unit. I'm talking both service units and colleges, and how to show the effectiveness of a CRM like Salesforce in supporting students and their efforts. And we started getting a lot of really great results doing that, and probably doing that in year 5, year 6, and then really sort of identifying at an individual user level folks within different units who had embraced the technology, felt like that it could be useful in their day-to-day operations, and then kind of lean into this idea that skeptical users could become power users that could then convert their colleagues. In terms of technology and change, that's always a challenge. It's always a culture change, and we really wanted to focus on service at the beginning, and then transition to how can we make this experience a better experience for you, the service provider, whatever that is, whether it's financial aid, admissions, a college advisor, whatever the case may be. And we've had some really great results, kind of emphasizing the empathy of change management in our process of implementing Salesforce. Kim?
Thanks, Aaron. Always interesting is the differences there. So again, 2019 was when our institution implemented Salesforce, and we had a much different kind of rollout, if that makes sense. So we had very much a top-down experience as far as financial resourcing. The university did a lot to support our division, so central IT, and making sure that we could in fact implement Salesforce and build it out accordingly. So from a fiscal perspective, we had a significant amount of support in that adoption. And ultimately that included an institutional wave of attention, right? Okay, like University of Arizona has bought Salesforce. Let's all take a look, right? But when it came to actually getting folks in, it really was on, or the onus was on the central IT team to go out and make those connections and sell what Salesforce could do for those different units. And so that meant a lot of leadership connections. Whether that was the AVPs for advising, our provost office, right, all the way down to the directors of advising, really showcasing what is it that could make their day-to-day lives easier. But they had the option to say no. So they had the ability to say, we're not interested right now, or we're looking for this functionality. How do we do that? And so some similarities between what we saw with Aaron and John is really kind of leading with those success stories, right? So we had to get a couple first, and the registrar's office is one of them, which is what I'll talk about today. And so once we had kind of some of those larger units being our early adopters and saying, yes, you can help our process and you can build that, really utilizing those stories to better support what Trellis could do, so that we had some key metrics and saying, hey, we can make this process faster for you. Here's some data that you can track that you might not be able to do right now. And so being able to speak to the end user, so the financial aid counselor who's logging in and needs to make their day-to-day easier, as well as the director to say, here's the data that you can get out of this, and really focusing on relationship building in that sales process. Ultimately, and it's shifted quite a bit. We've also just done bi-weekly overviews. So if folks are like, I want to come and hear what Trellis is all about, they can do that twice a week, every week nowadays, to kind of check in and get an idea of how it might fit within their system. So we have both kind of an inbound and outbound sales process, if that makes sense. We certainly do outreach to strategic areas and those strong leadership connections, but also in some ways, it's departments and individuals who are reaching out to say, hey, we're interested in Salesforce. And then they meet with, at this point, me to build out an implementation strategy for that department. That might mean multiple features, cases specifically, which one makes the most sense for you, what's most important for you today. And sometimes those limitations can take a month, and sometimes those implementations can take 12 months, depending on how much of Trellis they want to use. We call our instance of Salesforce Trellis, which is something I maybe should have explained before I started calling it that. So again, very, very different. We've moved off to strategic funding to just central funding these days. So the U of A is feeling like, okay, we're keeping Salesforce. At first, we had some folks being like, well, like you're just the new kid on the block. You'll eventually go away. And now they're pretty certain that we're sticking around. And so that is kind of the difference that we've seen in how we bring folks in.
So this is a great example of how we really kind of revolutionized processes that students really had a tough time with. Just the Byzantine bureaucracy that a large institution has oftentimes can be a deterrent, both for persistence, retention, graduation. This is an example. We were process mapping the change major, a simple what seemingly would be a simple process of a student wanting to change from one major to another. The pink sticky notes are all the steps that a student would have to get through in the old process of changing the major. The other colored sticky notes were what was on the back end, either through technology or through staff. This actually still adorns my office wall currently as a reminder of the institutional change that we did. But we moved from this horrible 35 some odd step process for students, often having to run around campus in Tempe, Arizona in August in 110-degree heat to try to figure out how to get their major changed, to the next slide, which is simply a form. And what that form is a student just logs into their MyASU, or they log into changing majors at .asu.edu, and they simply fill out some questions about what they're where they want to be, where they are now, where they want to be. That form on the left side is what the student completes. They have resources while they're in the process of completing the form that gives them the ability to research different majors. And then the form gets routed to the appropriate major that the student wants to change into, which results in a case management case that you can see on the right side. The case subject and description pre-populate with the data that the student has inputted, and gives the college the information they need to change that student's major, which many colleges simply change the major, send courses, course list to the student as which courses they need to register for in the next semester. Some majors may opt to encourage the student to come visit them just because they want to connect with them about some of the intricacies of their particular major, whether they're internships or student teaching experience or whatever the major might be. But it's a much more seamless, easier to understand. It's no longer opaque or undiscernible. It gives students the ability to see where that case is located, what's being worked on, and then they get an answer within 24 to 48 hours about changing their majors. Once we implemented this in 2019, it really took off. It also gave us the ability to track major change requests and give us a sense of where students are moving from one major to the next, which became a very valuable tool for the colleges that were implementing this step to see where their students were coming from, where their students might be going, and gives them some really valuable data insight. If you want to go to the next slide. The other thing that we really wanted to implement with Salesforce was the ability to sort of proactively connect with students who have what we already had known through our analysis and some of the triggers that we can see in our data, problems that students might be encountering, but that students may not be asking for help for. And so this is where we created what we call the advisor portal. We basically kind of reimagined what a case management case could be. We built in some different data points, some pick list drop items that gives us the ability to build in preset data points that are typical of retention issues. And then we can load cases proactively. So develop lists of students who have particular issues, whether they're earlier alerts that they're performing poorly in their courses, whether they're on probation, whether they're off track in their major, whether or not they're supposed to be graduating but haven't applied to graduate, or maybe dropped courses when they were supposed to be graduating in a semester. Any of those types of triggers that we know through our data analysis, but that students may not realize are obstacles to their academic success and graduation. We can then load them into this user experience here, this user interaction here. It gives the advisors the ability to mass outreach through leveraging the marketing cloud, mass email students in one fell swoop that makes it quick and easy to engage students with the specific triggers that might be preventing them from moving forward. On the next slide, you can see how we can organize the data on the case to create a subject and description that's specific to that particular persistence indicator that's preventing the student from moving forward. So it gives transparency and visibility to their academic advisor, the specific issue that the student has. This is extremely valuable. It's a proactive sort of in the moment experience when a student maybe drops a class or doesn't log into Canvas or has failed a particular assignment. And we can create a case within 5 or 6 days, sometimes within 24 hours of that particular issue happening, and send that case in a coherent way to their advisors and their advising team so they can do outreach in the moment. So it's very timely, and it enables us to sort of have some interventions at the moment in time when students need them. If you go on to the next slide, you'll see that once the case is worked by a particular advisor, they can identify the specific academic or personal issues that might be preventing that student from performing or moving forward and moving on with their academic journey. And then that also gives us some really valuable data, which then leads to us doing an analysis of what cases we're creating, what campaigns we want to do. We have used this over the years to really sort of target the specific students who might be struggling at a specific time of a semester, so a specific cohort, and then create a campaign for that particular cohort based on analysis of this previous sort of campaigns that we've done in the past. So we launched this in 2016, really kind of made some changes and did some really great analysis in 2018 to really sort of key in on the specific sets of students who might be struggling. If you go ahead to the next slide. So we've had over 700,000 of these advisor portal cases since the launch in 2016. About 11,000, 12,000 of those cases have actually been generated by the colleges. And this is one of the ways that we really created buy-in for this effort, is we gave the colleges the ability to identify their specific sets of students that might be struggling, that are unique to their majors and their programs, and then enable them to load those cases themselves so they can do that proactive outreach that are specific to them. Most of the campaigns we do are provost generated, and my office sort of oversees that and makes sure and identifies the specific issues that are pretty standard for most colleges. They're not registered, that they're failing a course in the middle of the term, they're on probation, they're not graduating at a particular time, but we do the college campaigns have become increasingly popular, and more colleges are sending us or asking us to load cases for their specific students' issues.
Looks like it's my turn. So thanks, Erin. I appreciate that. So the U of A, as I mentioned, really kind of looked at strategically what are the bigger units on campus who had not maybe quite as long a processes for that change of major, but probably pretty close to having a student having to take a lot of steps, or kind of what we lovingly said, like carry their story with them on their backpack, right? Like I have to go to this office, and tell the story. And then I go to this office and tell the story. And so when we first launched cases, our first initial thought was the registrar's office, financial aid, and then actually HR is also another big use of our cases. We support both employees and students, so that's another one at U of A. But this is just an example of the registrar case. This came in through a case queue. Again, year 4 of implementation, right? A lot of this right now is coming in and responding and really tracking that. Haven't quite turned into that kind of proactive case creation, but that is what this looks like. Aaron, John, if I can have you switch screen, that'd be great. One of the things that I love about cases, and I'm sure all of you do as well, is really the ability to kind of communicate to and from with a student through the case itself. I lovingly tell people that this is great if somebody was to win the lottery one day and decided they never came to work again. No longer is it left in someone's email inbox. And so this is just an example of how the U of A does that inside of a case. John, I'll have you switch this slide one more time here. As we talk about data and really how specifically the registrar, what type of data we're able to provide folks, we can, again, these are all dashboards out of the box here at Salesforce, but we're able to look at what is the resourcing that might be needed. So what days of the week are higher use cases for the registrar's office? What categories are they most likely? This is hoped both understand what these students are needing, but also structurally support the human resources that we would need to kind of support the use cases at the registrar's office. We have similar reports for HR and financial aid, but for reasons and other things, I'm not sharing those today. But again, really kind of focusing on how we bring that all in one central location. I have you flip a gun here, John. I mentioned Cat Cloud, which is our student portal here. So again, I started off with saying we don't want that student to have to carry that story on their backpack, right? Technology enables them to send an email. Someone can reach out to them. They've done the work of letting us know. We also believe that the student should be able to get a snapshot of what's going on with that email they sent. And so Cat Cloud was released in 2022. This is just 2 screenshots of a sample student, Wilma, and the service cases they're able to track. So they're able to the subject, the department that currently has that case, the date and time it was last worked on, and the status of that case, whether it still be open or closed. And so again, really giving the students the autonomy and the ability to understand, hey, I didn't just send an email into the ether. Someone's looking into this for me, or maybe I do in fact need to follow up because it's still sitting at you a couple of days later, or maybe my case is closed and I didn't check my email to see if I had any response about that. So again, really focusing on end user experience for our Salesforce instance for selling, right? But also Cat Cloud has made a significant push in getting other departments into Trellis or into Salesforce, because the ability for students to see this is so pivotal into what we do every day in their experience. I'll flip it one more time. And we're going to transition to talk about training and support. So we showed you a little bit about all the work that we have done. And now we're going to talk about how we get all those folks to do those things.
Yeah, so I'm going to kick it off for ASU. So to talk a little bit about training and support, we're going to be really specific on case management and a little bit of knowledge for when we're talking through these logistics here. So our unit within the Office of the Provost does provide that training and support resource as kind of a frontline point. And in the event that it's a escalation to or something that we can't necessarily handle, we pass it along to our enterprise technology colleagues at ASU to help resolve and get feedback. But when it comes to training and support, we do focus on those 2 areas for the enterprise org. When it comes to just a breakdown of our staffing components, we do have one director, Aaron, who about 50% of his time is dedicated towards making sure that our Salesforce case management and knowledge users are supported. He also provides quite a bit of expertise and knowledge about our student profile and our advising portal resource as well. Then we have me, roughly around 25% of my time is dedicated towards providing those users that support. We also have a full-time business analyst senior who's been with the project since 2014. So she is also just a wealth of knowledge and information for our users, who works, and she primarily these days works with units who potentially want to remap how their cases are coming in when it comes to case management and how they're working within their unit to better support their needs today in comparison to potentially 2014, 2015 business operations, which is kind of cool. We also have one business analyst associate. About 75% of her time is dedicated towards just gradual working the cases, because we use case management as well for our intake of our bucket of responses that are needed for units. And she spends a majority of her time just working those odd-off requests, whether or not it's a case assignment rule change, etc. We also provide weekly training and support sessions. So those are one-offs if they're requested. And then Aaron also provides a weekly Salesforce workshop where he just hosts an open time where folks can hop in and ask questions. And then we also have a community of practice workspace. I will say, and Aaron, you're more the expert on this than I am, but our community of practice workspace hasn't necessarily gained a lot of traction, but it is a resource that is still out there for folks. And we are hoping to continue to chip away at making sure that it becomes more of a well-used machine. This didn't come into use up until a few years ago, though, so it wasn't part of the initial implementation. Most areas, marketing, recruitment, service, we all use Cornerstone software to deliver electronic content. That is the university's current system of use for HR standards. But we have recently migrated our content to Articulate Rise 360 as a portfolio that basically you can input your learning lessons, and then the Articulate Rise 360 content can actually be downloaded and input into Cornerstone to have that class published. We did that just because we've gone through this iteration once before. Trainings used to be located in Blackboard. When we moved it to Cornerstone, we had to recreate all of the content again and rebuild it within Cornerstone. And we are moving to Workday Learn in 2024 as a university, as a part of our HR implementation with Workday. So that training platform changing means that we've been trying to be proactive with Articulate Rise 360, because that'll allow us to basically download our content out of our Articulate Rise 360 and upload it into a class format in Workday Learn. So that hopefully will help with the transition overall. Aaron, anything to add regarding kind of how we're supporting folks on the training and support piece?
No, and as I mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, we really tried to lean into this idea of empathy, that we understand change is hard, and then also show examples of what other departments have really leveraged the platform to make more efficiencies. I actually have an entire recorded a session on Advisor Portal that suggests that advisors only need about 10 minutes a day to efficiently manage the outreach, the emails, the responses, and if they're taking longer than 10 minutes a day, then we really need to rethink how that platform works, because advisors' jobs are to interact with students, and the portal is really there to give them visibility into their students' needs, and then to quickly outreach to them to engage the students to connect with advisors. So that's really what we try to focus on to help folks feel more comfortable with the platform, and then make it as efficient as possible. Of course, at ASU, everything's about scale. 150,000 students in person and online. It's just we can't hire our way to support every student that we have, so we have to leverage all the tools that we have.
Thanks, folks. And so obviously University of Arizona is structured a little bit differently. So our development scrum teams and our what we're calling program, it was originally program team, but also now the customer engagement success team, all sit within central IT. So me and my team, as well as those other folks that do that as well. It was in 2021 when we really kind of established what was then called program team. And that included 3 implementation analysts, again, very similar to kind of a business analyst, right? Our goal was to kind of meet with folks, talk about that configuration work that would need to be done, understand what needed to be done on the Salesforce side, work with the Scrum teams to get that done, and then go out and do unit by unit training. That was great and often very time consuming. And so we wanted to make sure that we were kind of shifting into helping communities kind of share their knowledge. And so similar to ASU, we had our community of practices, both in our Teams channels as well as weekly meetings, just as new users started coming in and we were really still in that kind of selling stage, learning from users, getting feedback, and also hoping that they would help train themselves. This was when we were still in the hopefully they'll do the train the trainer method. We have found that is a variety of ways true, and in some ways not. We also had 2 wonderful support specialists that handled just, kind of those run-of-the-mill kind of, hey, I'm stuck, I don't know how to do this, the system's not working, how do I handle that? I shifted into this role of the customer success manager in 2023 and have since shifted the team quite a bit. And so even just in our naming convention, making sure we're talking about digital adoption. And so really being a partner with those units rather than, hey, we're training you, because training you can forget, digital adoption you have to do along with us. And so really kind of just even in the vernacular, talking about how it's a partnership and how we build that out. And then we have shifted to one support person who's also our digital technology specialist. And we recently implemented WhatFix, which is our digital adoption platform. John, I'm going to have you flip the screen just so I can kind of show that walkthrough. I'm sure we're running up on time here. So these are just quick gifts of the walkthroughs that WhatFix can do. All the screenshots you also saw have that self-help up in the upper right-hand corner. And so this really had to do with scalability. We knew we had a very mighty team of 5 or 6 of us, but as we quickly go over that 1,200 user category, we realized that offering that unit by unit training would not be that feasible. And so WhatFix is the ability to kind of in-app provide support when they need it, where they need it.
All right. So reluctant adopters when it comes to lessons learned. Some of the messages we heard during those early days of ASU onboarding Salesforce is we don't have time or resources to make this change. As a former manager in a student services unit, I definitely felt that way myself. The way we do it is fine. That wasn't necessarily the case. We all saw those Outlook inboxes flooding, and there were internal jokes at the university of, oh, feel free to email that unit. They'll get back to you in about a month. That wasn't the case. And so obviously there was a push and a need for this central CRM. We don't want our units information and processes to be this public. I know that this is something that when we were kind of dialoguing with Kim about at U of A, it was definitely something that she's facing. And as somebody who worked in a unit, that it was really helpful to see how students were interacting with, for example, financial aid, university housing, and other service units that had billing questions. It was really important to have that visible because it helped answer questions and be proactive to make sure that a student was getting to that successful stage if there was an issue that they were working for. So long story short, there's just some of the reasons. And since we're running up on time, Kim, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, so here's just really quickly what we found work. So converting those reluctant adopters and really kind of focusing on them to make sure they become powerful allies. It's really great to be able to say, I used to hate this and now I love this, and talk about why, right? And they can tell their stories. I would love to steal this from John and Aaron, but they really talked about empathy is key in converting. I think that is absolutely true. And really kind of building that from the ground up. We talked about highlighting successes, and then again, first for University of Arizona, really kind of utilizing WhatFix to provide guidance when and in-app where they need it. I would ultimately say that I think Aaron, John, and I would all agree that we actually are change management professionals that happen to work with technology. And so really helping folks get to the successes they would like. That's what we figured out works. Thank you, everybody.
Friends, thank you so much for this presentation. This was really, really great. A little confetti for you here in the end of the presentation. I know we are up on time, and I want to encourage everyone to keep moving along in your schedule. So what I'd like to offer, we have some great questions in the chat. John, Aaron, Kim, thank you so much. Would you be willing for us to send you the questions from the chat, and maybe we could respond to those maybe somehow via YouTube channel notes or send those out via email? Would that be acceptable? All right, great. You did a great job. Thank you so much. And I encourage everyone to move on to one of our sponsor 5 at 5 sessions. Thanks a lot.